Maybe one of the most fun surprises that happened last year was the emergence of George Kittle. He was a 5th round pick 2 years ago and showed some promise in 2017, picking up 515 total yards. However, he definitely had a breakout year in 2018. In 2017, he ended up with 1,377 total yards and 5 touchdowns. Then last year, he racked up 1,377 receiving yards and a second-team All-Pro performance. You can honestly make the argument he deserved the first-team All-Pro, even though Travis Kelce definitely had a great season himself. There's a lot of things that can be said about Kittle, but there's one thing most important you can say about him. This guy can play football, and he can play football very well. One thing that doesn't get talked about enough with him is he's not just a great receiving tight end, this guy's a great blocking tight end as well, and this play will be a good example of him doing just that. He has a one-on-one matchup. What I find interesting here is because it is going to be a run to the right side of the screen, take a look at the way he's actually going to go about making this block. Essentially, he's going to first fake as though he's going to the left side of the screen, which is something he could do. You know, he is an eligible receiver, he could be running a route, or he could just be trying to block someone else in a different way. But of course, that's not what's going to happen. He is blocking that giant, and it is going to be a run to the right side of the screen, so he's going to want to go basically right over there. He's going to want to get to the right side of the screen of that giant to make that block a lot easier, but he also doesn't want the giant to realize right away, oh, this is the run to the right side of the screen, I should just run over and get into play. So basically what I want to look at is take a look at how he fakes to the left and then is able to get to the right so quickly. I mean, that's just good footwork more than anything. It's being able to move your feet around and know what you have to do. Because now, if you're that giant player, what can you do here? Absolutely nothing. You have no hope at this point. Now, Kittle makes his block perfectly. Actually, one of his offensive linemen is going to run into him right here, which is why it kind of looks towards the end like he didn't do a great job. But no, Kittle did a fantastic job on this one. He made his block very well. He's a really good blocker. He can run block and he can pass protect, and that's what makes him very effective. Obviously, a good receiving tight end like Kittle isn't going to be in pass protection too often, but it is nice to know that he can do that. And it's really nice to know he can block in the running game because, I mean, as we saw with the Patriots, having a good blocking tight end can open up so many doors for you. It essentially just gives you an extra offensive lineman. I mean, we saw with the Patriots where they had Rob Gronkowski and James Devlin who both could block so well, obviously Devlin being a fullback. It essentially meant that you had to have 8 defenders in the box because otherwise the New England Patriots could consistently run against you because all 7 of their guys who need to make a block could make that block. And when you go over to San Francisco, which has a relatively similar system at times, that's kind of something they do as well. We all know how Shanahan loves to use fullbacks, so when you add in George Kittle, who can make a block just like an offensive lineman, it opens up so many doors for you. Like on this one, once again, he has a one-on-one matchup, and notice what's going to end up happening here. Basically, right at the bat, Kittle's going to get his left arm and put it underneath that edge rusher's right side of his arm. This is actually a perfect situation for Kittle because of what he's trying to do here. He's trying to get the edge rusher as far to the left side of the screen as possible. The further to the left side of the screen he is, the further out of the play he is. That's Kittle's job on this one. And so now that he has his arm underneath like that, he can just sort of twist his body a little bit, and now look at the positioning he's in. I mean, think about it. If you go to push something, which kind of angle would you want to do? Would you want to be like George Kittle, where he's bent over and using his shoulder to push someone? Or would you want to be like that Giants edge rusher who's going to have to try to use basically his hip to try to push something? It's obvious. You'd rather be George Kittle here. Because of that, Kittle's able to push that edge rusher, completely get him out of the way. He does get some help, but he didn't need it. I mean, he had already won at that point. Kittle's blocking is really good, and that's something that a lot of people don't take into account when looking at tight ends. Sometimes people will just look at the receiving yards, but having a good blocking tight end opens up so many windows. Being an awesome blocking tight end definitely has its obvious benefits, and it can really help you in the running game. You know, there's kind of been this narrative that's come up recently that running game shouldn't matter too much, and you should try to pass it more, but I actually think that with the new rule changes, you should run the ball more. Because of the way the middle of the field has been opened up in recent years, I actually think that play action becomes even more important, because if you can just get those linebackers to move in, it's a much more bigger benefit than it used to be, so actually getting people to bite and play action is more important now than ever. But also having George Kittle being a great blocking tight end does so much more than just help you in the running game. And this one will be a good example. First off, it is going to be play action to the top half of the screen, and basically they're going to fake as though George Kittle is going to be pulling to the bottom half of the screen to try to block a Viking in that area. And Minnesota actually completely falls for this, assuming that he is going to be blocking, and Kittle's easily able to pick up some yards here. You might think, okay, well maybe that just happened in isolation, someone just blew their assignment. It happens, not the biggest deal. Except it definitely wasn't a one-off thing. In fact, here, it's going to happen again on this play. Once again, it looks like he's going to be pulling to the top half of the screen to block a Viking, and it would be that Viking right there that you would expect him to block. However, he's instead going to run just past that Viking, and now he's wide open. He's a defensive coordinator's worst nightmare. Because if you tell your team, hey, we got to make sure we stop the run. George Kittle is a great blocking tight end, so we have to make sure that we go all out to make sure that we don't give up a big run. Well, that's something that's smart, except for the fact that if you do that, then George Kittle can beat you in the receiving game. But you also don't want to tell the person who's in charge of covering Kittle to make sure that he's always just focused on just covering George Kittle, because if you do that, then Kittle can block someone else, and now you've basically taken 2 players out of the play. This play is going to be another very good example of it, where once again it's a play action to the bottom half of the screen, and you know, these kind of plays don't really work with play action, but that's okay because Shanahan loves to run play action. But basically the way it's going to work is George Kittle is going to go out and block that Oakland Raider, but then at a certain point he is going to run out to the top half of the screen and run his route. And so as you see right now, this is actually perfect for Kittle here, because this is actually perfect hand placement. This is what you want if you're George Kittle. The way that he's able to push that Oakland Raider back, where at the same time, he could easily get off this block as soon as he wants to. That's the Raider who would be in charge of covering Kittle here, and if you are that Raider, well really, what can you do here? I mean, if this is a running play, and it is a run in his direction, if he runs through the top half of the screen to take away that area of the field, then it would be an easy touchdown. But of course, if it's a passing play, which it is, and he stays right there, which he does, then this can happen. Kittle is easily able to get off his block, and now he's easily open, and he's able to walk in for a touchdown. That's kind of the problem you're facing when you're going up against George Kittle. Having just a good, talented receiving tight end does a lot, but especially when that good, talented receiving tight end can also block really well, that just makes him such an effective player. He's not just one of those guys that's going to have one unexpected good season and then fall down. Really, tight ends don't do that too often. Usually if a tight end is good, they're good. One other play I really liked about George Kittle is this one. It's going to be a cover 3 zone, and it is going to be a play action to the top half of the screen, and then Kittle is going to be running a crossing route right over there. I probably talk about one of these types of plays on every single one of my videos because it is the most important play in the NFL today. The middle of the field has been opened up, so take advantage of that if you're an offensive coordinator. It just makes a lot of sense. But basically what I like about this play from Kittle is look at what's going to end up happening here. As of right now, he is not open. But despite that, Kittle also will be open in a little bit once he gets past those 2 Vikings. He just has to get past them. But look what he's going to do. He kind of just slowly coasts over, takes a couple of steps in, and now he's easily open, able to make the catch and run for a ton of yards. He didn't just run his route as fast as he had to, he ran where he was going to be open and stayed where he was going to be open as long as he possibly could, which is what you're supposed to do there. At the end of the day, the name of the game isn't run your route the quickest, it's get open and then stay open for as long as possible so your quarterback can find you and hit you. That's one of the things that I do like about Kittle is, again, it's not just his ability to make catches and his speed. I mean, everyone knows those things already when you see them on tape. Actually, you don't even need to see them on tape. You can watch it live and be like, that guy's fast, or oh, that guy can make some good catches. I mean, we've all been watching some college game with a bunch of players we've never heard of, and then all of a sudden say, oh hey, that receiver's actually pretty fast. Or, you know what, that tight end can make some good catches. You can notice that stuff just by casually watching a game. But route running is one of those things you do kind of have to look at with a little bit closer of an eye, and George Kittle is actually a very good route runner. I mean, granted, I don't know if you can have 1,300 yards as a tight end without being a good route runner, but yeah, this guy is a good route runner, and this play will be another example of him running a good route. They're going up against a cover 3 blitz here, and it's going to be a play action to the top half of the screen, and then the quarterback is actually going to break down to the bottom half of the screen. That's Kittle's route here, and again, similar concept. Hopefully the linebackers move in, he gets past them, and is able to pick up some yards. It's very similar concept. But what's interesting here is, as you see right now, he is easily open. I mean, this play worked out perfectly. New York did not do a very good job of realizing this is going to be play action. But there is a problem here. This play did not work out perfectly, mostly because of that situation right there. So basically what that Niner has to do is run as fast as he can forward to get that giant out of the way as quick as possible. But if you're Kittle, also what should you do here? Well, you don't want to get there as quickly, because the quicker you get there, maybe the giant realizes, oh wow, he's way open, I gotta keep an eye on him. So Kittle slows down here. So now look at how much he slowed down before making that catch. It was basically just a jog at that point, which is what he had to do because that allowed him to be open for as long as possible. If he ran as fast as he could on that one, it probably wouldn't have even been a catch. That was just good awareness by Kittle of knowing what the situation is, knowing you don't have to run as fast as you possibly can, and knowing when to slow down. And also give credit to his teammate, the wide receiver, for clearing out of that situation as quick as possible. You know, these receivers have to make sure they run their routes too, even if they're not the ones getting thrown to. Route running is always important, even if you're not the one who ends up getting the ball. One last play, and this one might be my favorite play from George Kittle, and it was this one. It's going to be a cover 1 hole, and Kittle's just running a simple flat route to the top half of the screen, nothing too fancy at all here. And as you see right now, he is a little bit open, he has some separation, although that Giants defensive player is going to try to actually make a play on this ball, which is going to be regrettable in hindsight. I mean, if I'm a defensive coordinator, I actually don't hate this play, because if you do get the interception, it's a pick 6, I think it's worth trying to make the play there. I know he slightly misjudged how much separation there was, and maybe was hoping for a slightly slower pass, but if he does make this interception, it's going to be a touchdown, which would have been a huge change. I mean, the way you can win on defense is by making some splash plays, so I don't hate the idea at all to try to go for it there. However, it didn't work. Kittle is easily past him, and he'll probably get run out of bounds because of that giant right over there, correct? Well, of course not. He's not just going to let himself get run out of bounds. He runs straight into that safety and picks up another 5 yards just because he's so much bigger. It wasn't enough for him to just get the first down. He wanted every yard possible, and personally, I love that about a guy. I wouldn't want someone on my team that just wants to pick up the first down and move the change and then, make sure they get some yards. I want a guy who's going to fight for every yard possible. I mean, at the end of the day, adding 5 yards after the catch just by not going out of bounds really adds up. At the end of the day, it really does. I think it's fair to say that Kittle is clearly one of the best tight ends in this game at this point, and he's going to be a huge weapon for that 49ers offense for a long time to come. And now that Rob Gronkowski is officially retired, there is kind of this opening of who can be the next best tight end in the league, and honestly, he is definitely one of those guys that could take that throne. I think he's one of the guys you can talk about. You could also talk about Travis Kelce, and as a Bucs fan, I might throw OJ Howard in there as one of the guys who has the potential to maybe take that throne, although he's definitely not there yet. I know people will point to the fact that Kittle broke the record for most receiving yards by a tight end in a single season. However, Kelce was just behind him. He had 1,336. Kelce also had 15 more receptions and 5 more touchdowns, but again, you go back to Kittle and say, well, he's a better blocker, even though Kelce is a solid blocker himself. I think Kelce probably got it for name recognition more than anything, because this is his 3rd season in a row where he's had over 1,000 yards, but either one of these guys would have been very deserving of that first team All-Pro, and I think either one of these guys you make an argument for is the best tight end in the league right now.